U.S. President Donald Trump says the first batch of tariff letters will be sent out to countries from 1 a.m. Tuesday, Korea time. With just about 2 days left until the July 9th deadline, South Korea's top security advisor is in the U.S. for trade and security talks. South Korea's food ministry and food and retail industries have agreed to launch large-scale discount events to ease the burden of rising food prices. Prices of go-to food products like ramen, bread, and coffee will be cut as much as half of their original prices. The season's first heat wave warning was issued for all parts of the capital Seoul at 10 a.m. on Monday, 2 weeks earlier than July 25th of last year, when the country went through its worst heat wave ever. Letters with new tariff rates that U.S. President Donald Trump has warned of will be going out in just a matter of hours from now. South Korea's trade and security officials are in the U.S. for a full-court press ahead of the Trump administration's tariff deadline. Our Moon Ji-young starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced via Truth Social that the U.S. will start delivering tariff letters to other countries starting 12 noon Eastern Time on Monday. Currently, it is unknown which nations will be receiving the letter or have made deals. Earlier that day, Trump told reporters,
"Sending letters out on Monday having to do with the trade deals. Could be 12, maybe 15. And they'll be going out on Monday, and some will go out on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we've made deals also. So we're going to have a combination of letters, and some deals have been made."
Trump added that either a letter will be sent or a deal will be done by July 9th. Following Trump's comments, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick indicated a 3-week reprieve.
Tariffs go into effect August 1st, but the president is setting the rates and the deals right now.
This comes after Trump's announcement of the tariff in April, which included a 10% base rate for most countries and additional rates, which in some cases went up to around 50%, although he later delayed the effective date for all but the 10% tariff until July 9th. Meanwhile, National Security Advisor Ri Sung-rak is in Washington, D.C. for 3 days to discuss pending issues. On his way to the U.S. on Sunday, he told reporters that Seoul and Washington have been discussing issues related to trade and security.
As the current negotiation phase is becoming quite critical, I'm stepping up my involvement, which is why I'm visiting the United States.
He is expected to meet with his U.S. counterpart, Marco Rubio. When asked about defense cost sharing, he indicated that a range of issues were open for discussion, implying that cost sharing could be on the agenda. The agenda is also expected to include coordination for a summit between President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
The OECD projects South Korea's potential growth rate for 2025 at 1.9%, marking the first time the projection has fallen below 2%, a 0.1 percentage point drop from the 2% forecast last December. A potential economic growth rate of under 2% means that even if the factors of production, such as labor and capital, are operating as efficiently as possible, returning to the 2% level is not possible without inflation risks. The Lee Jae-myung administration has pledged to bring the country up to 3% potential growth rate. Lee's policies focus on addressing structural issues, such as low birth rates, an aging society, and weak innovation, and the hope of boosting long-term growth. In collaboration with South Korea's Agriculture Ministry and food companies, prices on essential foods such as ramen, bread, and coffee are being discounted up to 50% to help curb inflation and to support consumers during the summer vacation season. Our Park Jun-han has the details.
The government and food industry announced that they will provide up to a 50% discount on staple food items to alleviate the burden of rising prices during the summer vacation season. The announcement was reported 5 days after the release of June's inflation data, which indicated a year-on-year increase of 4.6% for processed foods, the highest in 19 months since November 2023. In June, 62 out of 73 processed food items saw price hikes. To tackle the inflationary impact of this, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs held discussions with major food and retail companies last Friday to outline plans to stabilize food prices. The discounted items will include products with high consumer price sensitivity, such as ramen and bread, and products with slightly reduced raw material costs, such as ice cream and juice, which are often consumed during the summer. Participating companies include Dongsim, Otugi, SBC Group, and CJ Cheiljedang. The Agriculture Ministry noted that rising costs of key ingredients, labor, and energy have increased the financial burden on food companies. To ease high cost pressure, the ministry has already applied tariff quotas to 21 imported raw materials and extended value-added tax exemptions for cocoa and coffee imports through 2025, as since 2023, the two have seen price increases of over 190% and 68% respectively. The ministry pledged to expand funding support for raw material purchases to ease the industry burden and agreed to continue discussions on issues such as overseas expansion and food ingredient supply. It will monitor processed food prices over the next month and will continue to discuss discounts with industry representatives. Park Junan, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung and newly appointed Prime Minister Kim Min-seok held their first lunch meeting on Monday. According to Senior Presidential Secretary for Political Affairs Woo Sang-ho, they discussed the Prime Minister's main responsibilities, including following up on the administration's policy agenda, identifying new and long-term policy issues, and resolving social conflicts, all with a focus on public safety, order, and livelihoods. On pending issues, Prime Minister Kim said he plans to meet with medical students and trainee doctors about a return to work. President Lee asked him to take an active role in resolving the matter. Now, the President and the Prime Minister will hold this closed-door meeting every Monday. Tensions are running high at the National Assembly as lawmakers reconvene for a new round of legislative activity, but also hinting at possible cooperation. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
The July extraordinary session of the National Assembly kicked off on Monday, with the ruling and opposition parties entering the term sharply divided following last week's passage of the highly contentious extra budget bill. The ruling Democratic Party is pushing to pass a number of bills that were previously vetoed by the former administration, including broadcasting reform legislation and a revision to the Trade Union and Labor Relations Adjustment Act, known as the Yellow Envelope Bill. The broadcasting bills aim to reduce political influence over public broadcasters by limiting the number of board members appointed by political parties, while the Yellow Envelope Bill seeks to broaden the definition of employer and restrict damage claims against labor unions. Efforts to reform the prosecution are also picking up pace.
We promise to swiftly implement the complete separation of investigation and indictment, ensure effective checks on prosecutorial power, and institutionalize political neutrality.
Meanwhile, the opposition People Power Party is continuing its efforts to counter the DP's legislative dominance. PPP floor leaders Hong Won-seok declared that the party would use upcoming confirmation hearings for ministerial nominees as an opportunity to push back against what the party sees as unilateral rule.
The People Power Party, together with the people, will examine the qualifications and moral integrity of ministerial nominees riddled with criminal suspicions on a microscopic level in order to block the arrogant and one-sided governance of the Lee Jae-myung administration.
Although ministerial nominees do not require a parliamentary vote for appointment, confirmation hearings serve as a key opportunity for the opposition party to vet and challenge the president's personnel decisions. Despite this heightened tension, both parties are making cautious moves towards cooperation. On the first day of the session, the policy chiefs of both parties formed a joint consultative body aimed at fast-tracking livelihood-related bills and coordinating shared campaign pledges made during the recent presidential election. Both sides acknowledged their differences on key policy matters but agreed on the need for discussion, not confrontation. As the session continues, the coming weeks will test whether bipartisan dialogue can truly take root. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung today met with Cardinal Lazara Yuhung-sik, the Vatican's Minister of Clergy, at his office in Yongsan, where they discussed cooperation between South Korea and the Vatican for peace on the Korean Peninsula.
대한민국의 평화와 또 한반도의 안정 이런 문제에 대해서 어쨌든 전 세계가 각별한 관심을 많이 갖고 계신데 남북 관계 개선에 우리 교황청이 좀 각별한 역할을 해주시면 좋겠다는 말씀드립니다.
Now, Pope Leo XIV is scheduled to visit Seoul in 2027 to attend World Youth Day. President Lee added that he hoped the Pope could stop by North Korea in time with his trip to Seoul. And the Cardinal responded he wished to see President Lee taking a photo with Chairman Kim Jong-un given that opportunity. Cardinal Yu also delivered the Pope's invitation for the South Korean leader to visit Rome, while President Lee thanked the Church for its role in restoring South Korea's democracy. The Cardinal is the first religious leader President Lee Jae-myung has met since his inauguration. It's been way too hot for July, and it only got worse. Seoul saw the whole city under a heat wave warning for the first time this year, while the southern part of the country suffered even more. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
Reaching up to 33.2 degrees Celsius on Monday, Seoul saw its hottest day of the year so far and issued a heat wave warning to every part of the capital for the first time this year.
Today is really hot. I feel like it wasn't this hot in the past.
A heat wave warning is issued when the highest feels-like temperature is expected to reach 35 degrees Celsius or higher for 2 or more consecutive days, or when major damage is anticipated as a result of the heat. In fact, Seoul is expected to see its highest temperature go up to 36 degrees on Tuesday. The first citywide heat wave warning of the year came a full 18 days earlier than last year. City officials are urging residents to stay indoors and keep cool. But of course, fountains like this offer a playful and much needed way to beat the heat.
They don't have these in California. Water helps me forget the heat because it cools me down and then I forget the heat.
Monday also marked Sosa, or lesser heat, a traditional seasonal marker falling usually on July 7th or 8th, signaling the start of the summer heat. While temperatures are rising, the hottest days are still ahead, expected to peak around what's called Taeseo, or great heat, later this month. Meanwhile, other parts of the country also saw extreme heat, particularly in the south. Gyeongsangnam-do Province's city of Miryang saw its temperature rise to 39.2 degrees. Starting on the 8th, changes in atmospheric pressure will lead to easterly winds across the country. This means areas west of the Baekdu-daegan-san mountain range, including Seoul and the greater capital region, are expected to see particularly scorching conditions. And with the heat also came casualties, with officials announcing that 2 people died due to heat on Sunday, taking the death toll to 7 since mid-May, when heat-related injuries started being recorded. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Deadly floods in Texas have left dozens dead, including children attending a summer camp. And efforts are still ongoing to clear debris and find survivors. Our Pyeongyang has more.
Catastrophic floods rushed through central Texas on Friday and have left at least 82 dead. The death toll climbed over the Independence Day weekend as emergency crews carried out search and rescue efforts. Kerrville County was hit the hardest, with 40 adults and 28 children confirmed dead. Among those affected are children from Camp Mystics, an all-girls summer camp where 10 children still remain missing.
And it was nothing short of horrific to see what those young children went through. And we will remain 100% dedicated, searching for every single one of the children who were at Camp Mystic, as well as anybody else in the entire riverbed.
Efforts continue to recover bodies and find additional survivors. Volunteers have joined the mission and formed search parties, hoping to bring at least one more child home.
You know, I've got 2 babies at home. It's the least I could do. You know, they're home safe and there's people out there that they're missing their children or their family members. So I feel like it's the least I could do to help.
Dozens remain missing. Texas Governor Greg Abbott warned that more rounds of heavy rain are expected to last through Tuesday, potentially triggering further life-threatening floods in already saturated areas. The U.S. National Weather Service has extended a flood watch across much of south-central Texas, forecasting several more inches of rainfall in the coming days. On Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump stated that he had approved a major disaster declaration, granting first responders access to essential resources for ongoing search and recovery operations. He acknowledged the devastating toll on families, calling it an unimaginable tragedy with numerous lives lost, and pledged that his administration would closely coordinate with state and local officials. Hyun-young, Arirang News.
The resumed ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas ended in deadlock, with the two sides failing to reach common ground. And violence on the ground continues to intensify despite the growing diplomatic push. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
The first round of ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas, which opened on Saturday in Doha, has ended without a breakthrough. According to reports from Reuters and AFP, the delegations from both sides engaged in indirect negotiations facilitated by mediators. A Palestinian official told AFP the talks focused on a ceasefire framework and a possible hostage prisoner exchange. But no progress was made in the first meeting. Reuters also cited several Palestinian sources who said the initial round concluded early Sunday morning. They claimed the Israeli delegation lacked the authority to reach a deal. Meanwhile, ahead of his scheduled meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House on Monday, President Trump expressed optimism about a possible breakthrough between Israel and Hamas.
I think there's a good chance we have a deal with Hamas during the coming week.
Netanyahu also voiced confidence that his talks with a U.S. leader would significantly contribute to progress in the negotiations.
I believe that the conversation with President Trump can definitely help advance this outcome.
Ahead of the negotiations, Hamas had reportedly proposed a revised truce plan. It includes a 60-day ceasefire and the return of more than 10 living Israeli hostages and the bodies of several others in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Hamas also demanded Israeli troops pull back to pre-March positions when earlier talks collapsed. Other conditions include restarting UN-led humanitarian operations in Gaza and reopening the Rafah border with Egypt for medical evacuations. However, Israel rejected the proposal, calling it unacceptable. Despite diplomatic efforts, violence continued on the ground on Sunday. An Israeli airstrike targeting a residential area in northern Gaza before dawn killed 10 people. In total, Gaza's civil defense said 26 Palestinians were killed in Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip on Sunday alone. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
The soundtrack for Netflix's animated film K-pop Demon Hunters has jumped 5 spots at number 3 on the Billboard 200 chart. Billboard reported last Sunday that the album has become the top charting soundtrack of the year so far. It also marked the highest charting animated film soundtrack since Encanto, which spent 9 weeks at number 1 in 2022. And just last Friday, the track Your Idol topped Spotify's U.S. daily charts, adding even more momentum. Time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us in the studio is our sports editor, Paul Neate. Hello, Paul.
Hello there.
So why don't we start with EAFF E-1 Champions that just got underway this evening. In fact, South Korea's men's match against China kicked off, minutes ago.
Yes, that's right. And they are off to the perfect start. It's currently 1-0.
Wow.
Lee Dong-kyung scored after 9 minutes. A great goal from outside of the box. But yes, at Yongin Mira Stadium, South Korea are getting their EAFF campaign up and running as they look to regain the title they lost to Japan in 2022. Now, some team news from earlier today as John Jinu, the K-League 1 top scorer, was forced to withdraw from the squad due to illness. He was complaining of feeling dizzy, and FC Seoul's Jong Sung-won was brought in as a replacement. South Korea are the most successful team in the competition with 5 titles overall and won it 3 times in a row from 2015 to 2019. But they lost 3-0 to Japan in the final group game in 2022 to surrender their crown, and so will be looking to make amends this time around. Up next is Hong Kong on July 11th and then Japan on the 15th.
Moving on to baseball now. In the KBO, I believe the Hana Eagles are having their best season in decades. I believe 3 decades?
Yes, they are top of the standings at the halfway point of the season for the first time in 33 years.
Wow.
Now, this was confirmed thanks to a 10-1 win over the Kium Heroes on Sunday to make it 49 wins. The Eagles are now looking for 50 wins at this stage for the first time since 1992 when they last won the regular season. Now 71.4% of teams that earn 50 wins at the halfway point go on to win the regular season. Now such a good showing has been helped by the team's pitching players with Cody Ponce and Ryan Weiss each earning 10 wins. The Eagles will face the informed Kia Tigers in the last series before the summer break, during which on July 12th in Daejeon there'll be the All-Star game. But LG Twins first baseman Austin Dean and Kia Tigers pitcher Adam Oller will both miss out through injury.
Paul, now to MLB, I have to say mixed fortunes for 2 South Korean stars.
Yes, that's right. Kim Hye-sung was back in the starting lineup for the LA Dodgers. And by all accounts, he had a very impressive display both at the plate and in the field. He started as hitter number 6 and second baseman against the Houston Astros, going 1 for 4. His defensive plays in the first 2 innings earned him standing ovations, getting hold of a Christian Walker hit down the middle before firing it to first base to end the inning. A leaping throw resulted in a similar fate for Yena Diaz in the second, but despite this, the Dodgers lost the match 5-1. Meanwhile, Kim Ha-sung of the Tampa Bay Rays returned from injury, but is out again. Kim made his first appearance for the Rays and first in MLB in 11 months on Friday, going 1 for 3 with a stolen base against the Minnesota Twins, marking his return from a shoulder injury. However, he missed the next 2 games with cramp in his right calf. The Rays haven't commented on when he'll be back.
All right, Paul, thanks for that. I'll see you next Monday again.
Yes, thank you.
The first heatwave warning this year has been issued for Seoul today. It is 18 days earlier than last year. Heatwave warnings were also in place in western and southern parts of the country, and the rest of the country is under the heatwave advisories. With heat waves everywhere, the daytime temperature in Seoul will soar to 36 degrees Celsius tomorrow and Wednesday, and the feels-like temperature will exceed 35 degrees across the country. In addition, it will feel as hot as 29 degrees in Seoul metropolitan area tonight, which is almost considered a supertropical night. Tomorrow morning will start off at 27 degrees in Seoul, 24 degrees in Gyeongju. Daily highs will go up to 35 degrees in Chuncheon and Gwangju, 22 degrees in Jeju. The heat wave is expected to strengthen this week, mainly in the western regions. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. For all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.